The history thing, they sort of tell us that the space program started because of the competition with the Russians. But the truth is, our space program started right after World War II when all those German engineers came over here, and they all lived out in El Paso. And in fact, the rocket that Al Shepard flew on, the Redstone, was a modified German rocket. I mean, it was a new one, but it was modified from some of their old V-2 planes. So the Germans had a lot to do with our early program, and in fact, they're the ones who designed this thing. So we would not have gone to the moon had it not been for the Germans. And I'm a little sad that they don't even mention them in all the audiovisual videos. I think that's a little unfair to them. You don't see any statues of Ronald up there either. But I would tell you, he was absolutely wonderful, wonderful. Very warm, very genial, very friendly. And he remembered your name forever. He met you once. Years later, he would remember your name. He was that kind of a guy. Obviously, part of the problem is that he was a Nazi. He had to be a Nazi to survive back in those days. I think he was given a choice to build rockets, either be a Nazi or you see a firing squad. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what happened to him. He wanted to build rockets. So here is the result of what he did. This is the largest vehicle that's ever been, and the heaviest vehicle that's ever been launched from the surface of the Earth. Look at these 5 engines back there. Look at the exhaust plane. That thing is 10 or 12 feet in diameter. That is huge. This thing used to be sitting out in front of the vehicle assembly building out in weather, and it was beginning to fall apart when Delaware North built this building and refurbished it, brought it down here. But I used to do television interviews sitting inside one of these rocket engines. Kind of interesting back in the day. Now you see the first stage. This thing is a blow up that separated all the stages, so you can see the different stages. As we walked out the other end of the room, you'll see the second stage, and then the third stage, all the way down. The first stage, the whole thing, my flight, the whole thing weighed almost 7 million pounds. And we were lifted off the ground 7.5 million pounds of flight. First stage was most of it. About 5 million pounds went from the first stage to the third. So that's kind of fuel. We burned almost 5 million pounds of fuel in the first 2 minutes of flight. The fuel lines in this thing are 18 inches in diameter. And the fuel pump is a 600,000 horsepower generator pump that pumped the fuel through that 18-inch line. We made it at the 18-inch line, rate of 18,000 pounds per second. And it pumped all that 5 million pounds up. Amazing. Absolutely. This is the right way to build a space launch vehicle. The shuttle departed from this, and it was not very successful. We lost 2 of them. We lost 14 people in the shuttle program because of the design, and that included the solid rockets that they used alongside the system. Solid rockets are okay, but there are a lot of vibrations, and once you start it, you can't stop. You're going to go. You're going to go. If one of them happens to quit on you, the other one does have some explosive panels that they can blow out and equalize the pressure so that you kind of neutralize the other rocket. We never had to do that, but what we did on Challenger, of course, is the rocket, the hot exhaust blew through one of the seals. Their segments go together with the seal around where the segment goes. And the hot exhaust blew out through one of the seals and cut through the
external tank.
Well, the metal work that attached to the structure. That's why we lost Challenger. Columbia we lost because some foam came off the solid booster and hit the leading edge and broke the ceramic leading edge, a hole about this big around. And the heat of re-entry got in that, went through that hole, and just sheared that wing right up. There's nothing they could do about it. So the shuttle, it's a basic design problem. This is the right way to do it. As a matter of fact, on Apollo 8, they lost the center tank. They lost the center engine on the way up. The structure that held the engines on the tail of this thing broke. And because of that, the center tank moved and the automatic system shut it down. The other 4 engines kept running and they just took a little longer to get started, that's all. But they were fine. And that would not have happened on the show. I'm a big fan of Saturn, I'm not a fan at all of Saturn. Yeah, Apollo 12 was struck off. As a matter of fact, I was close out. I couldn't do it. I went back to duty. It was raining past the call. NASA really hadn't thought through the weather issue with launches back in the day. And they didn't think the rain was going to be a problem. The rain, not a problem so much, but the clouds that could make the rain work because they had static electricity. And when Apollo 12 got about 100 feet in the air, the exhaust became a perfect conductor.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
So they became a
The next presentation in the Lunar Theater will begin in 3 minutes. If you would like to join us, please proceed to the nose end of the Saturn V rocket.
Saturn V
Thank you.
has its own navigation system to get in and get things going. It's called the instrument unit, built by IBM, protected from that. And so it just kept us. We gave them time to get it back up. Yeah, but the alternative would have been to keep Worden with the back. He elected wait for a little bit and see what's going to happen. They weren't going any. I mean, they weren't falling off their trajectory. So he just kind of waited it out. And within a minute, they had it. So if you want it, now this is a command module. This used to be cleared out the other end. They moved it back here. If you want to see what it looks like inside, you get up there and take a look. You'll see a blown up flight plan and turned out at the other end. There used to be a lunar module sitting up here up high. They had it suspended. They took it down and it's on the ground down here. Where it is, the lunar module. That's a real one. That's one. That is a flight one. So if you want to just kind of walk through and take a look, if you have any questions, I'll answer if I can.
Sam Kamar gives you his regards.
The what?
Sam Kamar, the astronaut shuttle astronaut, gives you his regards.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Sam, sure. How's he doing anyway? I haven't seen Sam in years.
Oh,
He's still with Lear?
He retired.
Oh, he did retire.
Yes. He took me out for the ride in his German.
Oh, did he? Oh, yeah, he does that.
That was cool.
Yeah. Sam's a good guy. I like Sam.
Yes, very nice.
I don't see him. He doesn't come to many folks, I think Sam is probably enjoying his life.
Yeah, she does the astronaut honor in December. Most of the New Year's. He worked his time.
Yes.
Around.
Yeah, I did that Wednesday. And then I
Stage 1 burned the longest. Stage 1 burned the longest.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and how did that feel?
Well, stage 1, stage 2 about the same, but stage 2,
Oh, yeah?
where stage 1 has 7.5 million pounds of thrust, stage 2 only has about 1 million.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take nearly as much fuel, and you're already out of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So I forget now how long this stage 2 burns, but it's about as long as the first stage.
I had the biggest jolt when stage 1
Yeah, it's just
shut down.
no jolts. No, it's all pretty smooth.
On the CM119 back here, it seems like it's pretty stripped out inside. Do you know what happened to those?
Oh, probably is. I know that Apollo 15, which is sitting at the Air Force Museum in Wright Pat,
Right.
They pulled the instrument panel out of it and put it in 16.
Yeah, to
And
put it
everybody's
on
wondering why the heck
display.
they did that.
To put it on display.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, that's what I heard. There was something. There was an article.
It's all mixed up. In fact, what you see here, this Saturn V, is not all one vehicle.
No, it's not.
It's all pieces of vehicles that happen to be available. So some of it's 18, some of it's an old mock-up, some of it's this, some of it's that.
Where's your old module?
My command
Right there.
module is at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio.
Oh.
We're all 3 Air Force guys, so the
Yeah.
Air Force got it.
This limb was supposed to be on 15, but when they,
Yes.
but when they got the
But
lunar
it was
rover,
not. But it
wasn't
not
heavy
equipped.
enough.
It was not equipped to take the lunar rover. So it got left behind.
Right, that's why we have it here now. But it used that originally was Apollo 15.
Yep.
See?
Sir?
Yeah, there's a lot of switching around that went on.
Yeah.
Is it true that was, I read there was like almost sort of a staging anomaly on Apollo 15 at the first stage? Because they deleted some of the retro boosters and because they had to bring the car to the moon. So they had to make the rocket lighter, so they deleted some of the retro rockets at the first stage of the wing. I don't know if it's
The
true.
separation thrusters,
Yeah.
when you separated from the first stage to the second, they lightened a little bit by taking off some of these separation motors.
Yeah, so they deleted
and
the
I
retro
think
rockets.
Well, we had the retro rockets fired before the explosive bolts
Yeah. So,
turned us loose.
yeah.
So we were going 4.5 Gs one direction to
Yeah.
half G the other instantly.
Yeah.
That was kind of a surprise.
I saw on
Mhm.
video that when the second engine ignited, actually got a bit too close to the first stage, so it sort of blew up in the air. When
Oh yeah. I
don't know if you have anything about that.
Yeah,
in the
it comes back.
debriefing.
Yeah.
Dave sort of
Now,
forgot to
if
tell you
we're
about that.
if we're going to do this all over again today, we'd probably try and land that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, there's no reason. The only problem with that is you got to carry a lot of extra fuel to be able to do that.
yeah.
But if you are going to reuse it, like SpaceX has used some of their boosters now 4 or 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
Blue Origin has used one of their launch vehicles 8 times now,
Yeah.
and they just refurbish it and keep going. Very, very cheap that way. Elon Musk's comment about that is compare it to airplanes. If you were to go flying in an airplane and then you threw the airplane away after the flight,
Yep.
that'd be pretty expensive,
Like a
right?
Boeing 787.
Well, that's what we're doing in the space program. We're throwing them away. So the reusability of the launch vehicle is really important. Big thing.
There's a hatch here from the LEM Antares, it looks like. They have it here, and I'm just wondering, how did they remove that and maintain integrity of the atmosphere? That seems to be from, it says right there, it's from Lunar Module Antares.
Well, that's, yeah.
I'm just wondering how they got the hatch.
That's
Or is that the
That's
probe?
inside the lunar module, on the roof of the lunar module is
yep.
this hatch.
Yes,
And it's a pressure hatch.
that's what I'm saying.
So yeah, so you pull that out, and then the other side of this is the docking system.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of the docking system is another hatch like this in a command module.
Right, but because that's a pressure hatch, I'm wondering how they got it here. Did they just jettison the LEM unpressurized, I guess?
Oh, I don't know.
Because it says that's from Antares, right down there, authentic Apollo 14 hatch, and that's a lunar module access hatch. So I'm just wondering, they would have had to have jettisoned Antares unpressurized, I guess.
I don't know.
I was puzzled by that when I saw that before. I thought maybe you might have had some knowledge
I
on
have
that.
absolutely no idea.
Okay.
How that
Didn't mean to stump the expert.
how
I
it
was just
came
curious.
back.
Very
I'm just curious how
interesting question.
I'm just curious if you would know, because I'm puzzled as well. And unfortunately, all the guys that would know aren't here anymore.
That's a good question. I got to find out. How did they get the damn thing back?
They would have had to have jettisoned it depressurized. I don't know any other way they could have done it.
Well, the only thing they could have done, they had to leave the ascent stage docked,
Mm-hmm.
pull that hatch out, take it in the command module, put the command module pressure hatch in place, and then undock.
And then that would have depressurized as soon as it was undocked,
Exactly.
because there's nothing to hold. Well, they don't need
Oh
it
yeah,
anymore.
the
They don't
lunar
need it.
module would depressurize.
Yeah, so it wouldn't matter. That's
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Well, basically, your EDA.
Oh yeah.
Well, to tell you the truth, I practiced it so many times that I wasn't really terribly excited about it. It's just something to do. I was so well trained that I did it about half the time that we had expected. Then I had to get back inside because I didn't have anything else to do.
Right.
So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. And you did the clothesline that they were going to do. That was weird.
Yeah, that was designed by one of the astronauts before me, who had been assigned to do that. And he was a very bright guy, but he wasn't very logical. He didn't have a lot of common sense. I had to change all of it.
Where did they actually fuel this? Other ports for the fuel for the rocket?
Oh, how did they fuel it?
Yeah.
I suppose there
Like right there.
filler caps somewhere.
That looks like right there,
that
maybe
looks
a
like one
port.
there.
Yeah.
And there's rooms for sensors.
And with all the sensing in the side there, I would guess. I never thought about that.
I'm just
But,
curious.
Yeah, that's a
I
good
just thought of it.
question.
Yeah.
Because that first stage takes a while to fill.
Well, if you look,
It has the most of it. Right?
You know, they're building for the SLS. They're building a liquid hydrogen tank that holds, I think, 1,000 ton of liquid helium or hydrogen.
mm-hmm.
They're building the biggest helium or biggest hydrogen tank in the world. Over
Yeah.
out in the pit. It's right there on 39. They've got all the vertical posts up. They haven't put the dome on it yet.
To answer you, that looks like some of the plumbing right there. If you look at the top of the tank and going out to
Yeah,
the side, that's some of the plumbing
that's
right
gotta be
there.
Some of the plumbing. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Never thought about that. Yeah. I just assumed that magically it got filled up.
Let's just go to Shell and
Shell oil. Yeah, I don't think they quite had it.
How are you?
Where is your spacesuit?
My suit's at the Smithsonian,
Oh,
being maintained there. I went up and, about 4 years ago, I was giving a guy a tour of the Smithsonian, and they asked me if I wanted to see my suit. I said, yeah. So we went down to Suitland where they have their cold storage, and it's like a morgue.
oh yeah.
We walked into this room that was like
Yes.
100 feet long,
Yeah.
and it had gurneys on both sides. You could walk down the center. Gurneys went up all the way to the ceiling. There were probably, I would say there were probably 6 gurneys in a stack, all the way down a whole 100 feet. They had like 300 suits in there, and they pulled mine out and let me look at it. The problem is that they deteriorate. There's nothing you can do about that. Each of those suits that we wore has a rubber bladder on the inside that holds the pressure. And the rubber bladder, they deteriorate. In fact, the guy showing me the suit put his hand inside the suit and pulled it out. It was all black from dust and powder.
Oxidation.
From the bladder. So there's a big deal about getting Neil Armstrong's spacesuit conditioned, refurbished and conditioned. They had a Kickstarter program, and they instantly raised all the money they needed to do that.
Reboot
And so they
the
redone
suit.
it.
I remember
what
that now.
they did is they finally put his suit on a mannequin, which has gas lines through it everywhere in the suit, and they blow an inert gas through the suit all the time. It's going to be an expensive thing, and I don't know how many suits they'll actually preserve that way, but they'll probably preserve the most important ones. But it's going to be a long, expensive. They do the same thing with watches. They collected all the watches after the flights too, and they're at the Smithsonian. And I thought, that's kind of silly why they're concerned about the watches. But I went up to take a look when I was there. We went over to their clean room. It was over at the Uberhazy hangar over at Dulles. And went in the clean room, and we were talking about the watch. They brought some watches out for me to look at, and they fall apart too. If you don't do anything to a watch for 30, 40 years, it gets corroded and all kinds of things. So they're trying to maintain them for posterity forever. So they got all the watches back. They take them apart, they clean them, and they make sure they're okay. Kind of an interesting thing when I was there that day. They restore all kinds of funny stuff. On a table in the middle of the clean room, they had the Enterprise.
I saw a documentary on that. Yeah, they're getting ready to display it.
It is on display.
Oh, it's on display now? Okay.
Yeah, they had the actual Enterprise
Model.
that Roddenberry used when he started Star Trek. Okay, it's the actual one.
Yeah.
The problem they had was as they filmed Star Trek and as the seasons went by, he kept changing the Enterprise.
Oh.
Yes.
So at the end, it was not like the first one.
Correct.
So they had to take all that stuff off, and they went back to the very first one. So it's restored as the original, not with all the extra,
you a
all
Star
the
Trek
good
fan?
stuff on it. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's a real lunar module. As you know, it's a 2-stage vehicle. The great part on top is what comes off the surface. The bottom here, coated with mylar for reflection, is the descent stage. Each one contains its own engine and fuel. And so you can separate these two, fly the ascent stage all by itself. One of the interesting things, you see these little rocket engines on the corners here. Those are RCS quads, reaction control system quads. Those engines are sized for the all-up lunar module of 37,000 pounds. The ascent stage, when it comes back off the moon surface, is only about 2,500 pounds. So these things are way, way oversized for the ascent stage. Okay, so if you were to see some of the pictures of the launch from the moon surface, you'll see the ascent stage doing this, jerking back and forth,
kind of wobbling a little bit.
It's wobbly, yeah.
Waffling.
And it's because if you hit one of those engines, it overpowers.
Oh yeah.
It's way too strong for the size of the ascent stage. So, like when Dave got into lunar orbit, he got about 50 feet behind me, and he settled it down as best he could. But then I had to do the docking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in lunar orbit.
And they didn't orbit to catch up with you. They just went straight.
Oh, they were straight there.
Right,
They were straight into
Or
orbit.
you get them.
We found out that the maneuvering we had to do on a lunar flight was a lot easier than we thought it was going to be when we started. Yeah, it was much easier. He came up into orbit right behind me, about maybe 100 feet, and stuck right there behind me, right in the same orbit.
And they could see you from the surface when you orbited around.
No, but there once in a while I could see them.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The next presentation in the Lunar Theater will begin in 3 minutes. If you would like to join us, please proceed to the nose end of the Saturn V rocket. Thank you.
They start out like.
Where were we?
Oh, you're talking about
You were orbiting and they
docking with the CM, with the LEM.
Yeah, I had to do the final docking because I still had the RCS engines on the command service module were thrust to weight ratio. They were a lot different. They were okay, so I could maintain pretty steady attitude. And the docking was easy.
It actually looks like the engine bells on this is smaller than that, or is it just the distance?
No, I think that's just. I think it's just the way you see it. Doesn't take much thrust to get off the moon, though. I mean,
No.
1/6 gravity. The ascent stage only weighed about 400 pounds. Oh yeah, because of the 1/6 gravity. So it doesn't take a big engine to launch them off the surface of the moon.
15 was the first one that could video it coming off.
Yeah. Well, we had
camera on the rover.
Well, had the video on the lunar rover, and they took pictures of it taken off. Yeah.
It took 3 flights for Ed to get it to tilt up in time.
What?
The first time it just went up and went out of screen, but by the time 17, he knew how long it took to get it to follow, to get it to track.
The big unknown was 11, both landing and takeoff, and it all worked. Worked right. We had some superb engineering back then. These people really knew what they were doing.
You spotted this from orbit, right? You spotted it from orbit in your capsule? Apollo 15?
Well, I picked them up on radar first.
Okay.
We had radar. We had all kinds of ways of.
You mean on the surface?
Yeah, on the surface.
Yeah, on the surface. I think you did zero in on the surface.
Well, I'm going over the surface of the moon at roughly 5,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And if I could pick them up coming over the horizon, then I had a pretty steady view of them. But as I got over them, 5,000 miles an hour, if you lose them, you're never going to get them back.
Yeah.
You're going too fast.
Right.
So I had a 10-par monocular that I could, and I did this a lot. I'd try and pick them up on the horizon and then just track them all the way through. But invariably, I'd lose them somewhere along that. You just can't hold it steady enough. In a 10-par monocular, your field of view is pretty small. But I do have pictures, I have photographs with a high-resolution camera of the lunar module and the lunar rover sitting on the surface.
From the
So you can
pencil?
actually see the lunar rover.
Wow.
Oh yeah. And it's only 4 feet. So that was a pretty good camera. The camera I carried was called a ball opticon camera. It doesn't have a traditional shutter. It rolls the film past the lens, and everything is coordinated so that you actually print out. That camera would take a picture from 65 degrees right of the trajectory to 65.